Hi, I'm Ros Cardinal, Managing Director of Shaping Change, and I wanted to talk to you today about ask culture versus hint culture. Now, this comes up quite a bit for managers who are delegating and maybe struggling to delegate, or not really understanding why they ask their staff to do something and it doesn't get done. And what it often comes down to is this issue of ask culture versus hint culture. Now, this was first mentioned back in 2007, I believe, on the internet, on a kind of Reddit style of forum, where there was an author called Andrea Donderi who mentioned it. Now, it took off, went viral apparently, and it's mentioned quite a bit through the internet. It pops up on blogs and so on. I read about it probably, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago, and it was really insightful for me. So I do like to give these insights for my clients. How it works is like this. It's all about how you grew up and how your family basically asks for things. If you grew up in an ask culture, you're expected to be fairly blunt and to ask for what it is that you want, and you either get it or you don't. In a hint culture, what's expected of you is that you hint for what you want, and people either choose to pick up on the hint or they don't. It goes a bit like this. If you're a child who, say, has soccer practice after school and it finishes at 4:30 and you'd like your parents to pick you up, in an ask culture, what you just do is you'd say, "Hey, mum, dad, my soccer practice finishes at 4:30, can you come and pick me up?" And your parents would either say, "Yes, I can do that," or "No, here's some money for the bus." In a hint culture, you don't directly ask, though. What you might do is say something like this: "Hey, mum or dad, soccer practice finishes at 4:30. And then you wait for your parent to pick up on the hint. And in a hint culture, if your family's used to doing that, one of them will probably say, "Oh, yes, look, that's fine, I'll pick you up." Or, "You know what, I'm going to be caught up at work, so here's some money for the bus." But you don't have to directly ask what it is that you want. So what happens is that, of course, when you put people into workplaces, you put ask people versus hint people, and that's where the problems arise. So if you're somebody who prefers hinting and you work with somebody who's an asker, quite often it feels like asking is very direct and you may feel put out, because often people who grow up in hint culture don't learn how to say no effectively, because the idea is that if it's a hint and you don't pick it up, that's fine. You never have to directly say no. So it feels like the ask person is being very pushy. Whereas on the other side of the coin, asked people will see hint people as being quite passive aggressive, because you're never really asking for what you want. You're just dropping broad hints, like you expect me to know what you're talking about. So, for example, in the workplace, if somebody is really busy and feeling quite stressed and overwhelmed, if they grew up in an ask culture and that's their style, they will quite simply pull their manager aside and say, "Hey, look, I'm really overwhelmed. I've got way too much on right at the moment. Can we talk about how we might rebalance my workload?" Whereas somebody in a hint culture will probably just, every time the boss talks to them, will say something like, "Oh gosh, I've just got so much on." And what they're really wanting is they're wanting the boss to pick up on the hint. Now, if the boss is also a hint person, they will do that. They'll recognize for what it is and they'll probably do something about it. But if the boss is an ask person, they don't pick up on the hint. And then the employee starts to feel resentful because they're not getting what they want. And the manager often feels resentful as well, because it works the other way. I had a manager once that I was coaching who said to me, "I don't understand why my people will never do what I ask them to do." And it turned out he was a hint person. And so what he was actually doing was basically dropping past somebody's desk and saying something like this: "Hey, look, if you're not too busy and you don't have too much on, I've got this project that needs doing." Now, that manager would walk away from the interaction thinking that he'd actually asked the employee to do the project. Unfortunately, his team, most of them were asked people. And when he basically tried to unpack it with him, they said, "But you didn't ask me to do it. You said if I wasn't too busy and if I had time, and I'm too busy and I didn't have time, so I didn't do it." And so that's where you can get issues at work. So it's really worth thinking about whether you're an ask person or a hint person, and also think about your people in your team. Are they ask people or hint people? And you need to think about how you work together on this, because like I said, if you can get big issues here where you've got a mix of both people. So hopefully you found that really helpful, and tune in for more manager hints and tips down the track. I'll talk to you soon.